I'm Marty Stouffer, and this is Wyoming. Wow! The Tetons must be our most beautiful mountain range. In fact, Wyoming is a state of mosts. Excluding Alaska, Wyoming has more wildlife, both in sheer numbers and in diversity, than any other state. Wyoming has the most bighorn sheep, the most Shiras moose, the most sage grouse, the most pronghorns, and the most black-footed ferrets. It's also the state of the lower 48 with the most grizzlies. And it has the most mineral resources. Wyoming is called the equality state, so it's appropriate that residents work hard to seek a balance with their wildlife. Come along with me to see the natural abundance that still abounds in wild Wyoming.
Winter in Wyoming. Just a thought sends shivers up my spine. Temperatures can plunge to 50 below and stall there for weeks on end. Despite the bitter cold, the thermally heated waters of Jackson Hole and Yellowstone stay open. Coyotes prowl the snow fields and river margins looking for their next meal. Trumpeter swans, insulated by 2 inches of down and feathers, feed year-round in the hot springs. An opportunistic hunter, the coyote checks out the health of the wildlife in its 50-square-mile home range. On occasion, an immature, injured, or careless trumpeter can fall prey to this clever predator. At over 35 pounds, trumpeters are the largest waterfowl species on Earth, outweighing most coyotes. trumpeter's 8-foot wingspan propels it to safety. Traditionally, these big birds have had far less to fear from coyotes than from humans, who nearly hunted them out of existence. Once numbering a scant 62 birds, over 300 trumpeters now concentrate in northwest Wyoming. By contrast, mule deer thrive in nearly every Wyoming habitat. Where their ranges overlap, white-tailed bucks will breed mule deer does, but not the reverse. This phenomenon could lead to the eventual demise of the mule deer. For some species, like deer and elk, winter is the biggest threat to survival. However, winter-killed elk means life for the magpie and the coyote. A primary factor limiting elk populations in Wyoming is the scarcity of winter range. To the southeast of Yellowstone and the Tetons, the craggy peaks of the Wind River Mountains rise from the surrounding countryside. The range contains the largest herd of bighorn sheep in Wyoming, including 1,600 head on the slopes of Whiskey Basin. These once numerous herd animals were slaughtered during the settling of the West. Now, wildlife field crews are reintroducing them to other parts of the state, including, ironically, the Bighorn Mountains. Wyoming ranks second only to Nevada in the number of wild horses that graze its vast open country. Wild horses originated in North America and migrated across the Bering Land Bridge to Asia. They became extinct on this continent during the last ice age, but were reintroduced into Mexico by the conquistadors. Some of these Spanish horses were turned loose or escaped and migrated north. Perhaps 2 million roamed the range at the beginning of the 20th century. Now, only 4,000 Mustangs are found in all of Wyoming. They compete with domestic livestock for grazing, and a debate centers around government roundups. The roundups may keep herd numbers too low to ensure genetic strength and ultimate survival. Wild animals in Wyoming must also compete with an enormous fossil fuels industry, a condition one conservationist calls a wealth of wildlife in conflict with cash. Wyoming has been dubbed America's fuel pump, raking in mega millions each year from the sale of energy to other parts of the country. The environmental price has been devastating. A web of roads link oil and gas pump jacks, causing tons of earth to erode. The state's air and water has been fouled. Ironic, considering that the population of the state has been steadily declining. Wyoming also ranks number 1 in the production of coal. "25% of the nation's reserves are buried under the Wyoming prairie. 1 trillion tons of coal. Wyoming coal drives the massive Jim Bridger power plant and other energy facilities across the country. Sulfur dioxide discharge from plants like these significantly contributes to global warming. Yet, the demand for electricity grows. Energy extraction and environmental protection are more often than not at odds. The very basins which contain vast energy reserves also provide habitat for a wealth of wildlife. In Wyoming, more pronghorn range over the rolling grasslands than in all other states combined. Sage grouse gather on traditional booming grounds, called leks, where the cocks display for the attention of the hens. These largest members of the grouse family are found in every county in the state, feeding on sage, their primary food. However, grouse numbers continue to decline due to the overgrazing of sagebrush habitats. Despite such problems, breathtaking beauty remains. Summer in Wyoming is a personal favorite of mine. In northwest Wyoming, Shiras moose are common, especially in riparian habitat around lakes and rivers. Calves stay with their protective mothers for a full year, and even though they're smaller than their Alaskan counterparts, Shiras moose are still imposing animals. With their long legs and closable nose flaps, moose are ideally suited for foraging on sodium-rich aquatic vegetation. They can submerge for up to 4 minutes and swim for miles. I've come to the Yellowstone area every summer for 25 years, not only to admire the moose, but also to enjoy the rich diversity of life in Wyoming.
Slow and easy. Oh, Maggie, oh. Oh, kind of deep. Good girl. Good girl. Oh, girl. Oh, girl. Good girl. Good girl, Maggie.
"80,000 elk live in Wyoming's forests, but these 1,000-pound bulls have chosen an open mountain meadow where a breeze keeps persistent flies away. I think bull elk are especially elegant in their summer velvet.
Hold it. Oh, Buck. Oh. It's okay, buddy. They're not gonna hurt you. Let's go. Come on, Maggie.
Bulls and cows go their separate ways for a major part of the year. Small bachelor herds are a common sight. My journey takes me through spectacular country. In the distance, I can see the rugged tundra home of the legendary grizzly. cubs, like this one from last season, may stay with the sow for 2 or 3 years, then travel with their litter mate for another few years. Baby bears are closely guarded by their cautious mother, who has her paws full keeping track of the playful youngsters. Mother bears are remarkably bonded to their cubs and will defend them even to the death. Especially threatening are big male grizzlies, which often attack and kill little bears. If the babies survive, they will increase their birth weight almost 1,000-fold before reaching the size of their mother. Grizzlies make the most of the short summer. Plants, berries, insects, and mammals like ground squirrels tempt their omnivorous palate. Often consuming 30,000 calories a day, 10 times that of a human, a grizzly can gain 3 to 6 pounds of fat in a 24-hour period. Another omnivore, the raven, is common in rugged western landscapes, which it shares with red squirrels. Several inquisitive baby squirrels are exploring outside their nest for the first time. The ravens watch, sensing that a meal of reckless little red squirrel may be at hand. The reasoning power and intelligence of the 2-foot-tall birds may equal that of a dog. Prudently, the tiny squirrels retreat to the safety of their nest hole. Nearby, a cow elk tends her newborn. The calf will lose its spotted baby coat when the aspen begin to drop their leaves. But autumn seems a long way off, with the forest now clinging to the wonders of summer. What must the West have been like when the soft footfalls of moccasined feet were the only traces of man? What must the broad Wyoming prairie have looked like when millions of bison roamed, and immense prairie dog towns still housed bandit-faced, black-pawed marauders. The rarest mammal in North America, the black-footed ferret, was believed extinct in the 1970s. Then, unexpectedly, miraculously, in 1981, a Wyoming rancher brought in a dead weasel to a taxidermist, who identified the weasel as a black-footed ferret. Once they lived throughout the Great Plains, but when the prairie dog, their main food base, was eradicated, so were they. Then, southwest of Cody, a population of 100 ferrets was found. Soon after, an outbreak of distemper reduced that number to a mere 18. Fearing the species would be lost, wildlife officials stepped in. In 1987, they trapped all 18 ferrets. 5 years later, as a result of a remarkable captive breeding program, black-footed ferret numbers had grown to over 400. A formal reintroduction ceremony celebrated the release of 49 juvenile ferrets. Four-month-old adolescents were selected because adults become too conditioned to captivity. The young ferrets were placed in outdoor holding cages near prairie dog towns. Badgers are aggressive predators of black-footed ferrets, so the release cages were mounted on stilts. Prior to their arrival at the release site, the ferrets went through wildlife boot camp. They were exposed to muzzled dogs and a remote-controlled stuffed owl. They even encountered a robo-badger mounted on a toy truck. During the weeks that followed, attendants came to check on them and clean their cages. The caretakers brought water and a diet of fresh prairie dog. A plastic tube from the nest box to the cage was left open, but the conduit to the ground was sealed for the first 10 days. The tubing simulated the tunnels in prairie dog burrows. On the 10th night, the conduit onto the ground was opened. Attendants continued to put food in the cages until the ferrets failed to return for 5 successive nights. The goal was for 10% of the ferrets to survive. But could captive-born ferrets make it on their own? Could they possibly reproduce and reestablish their species? The site of the experimental release was Shirley Basin in the Medicine Bow country, with over 200 miles of prairie dog towns. U.S. Fish and Wildlife biologists manned remote tracking stations where the movements of 36 collared ferrets were recorded. Radio telemetry revealed that most juveniles left their cages never to return. The majority remained close to their release site. However, one traveled 13 miles from the core area. Then, the signals died out. The following spring, ferrets were observed, alive, in the release area. Since their release, 5 deaths have been attributed to coyotes, and at least one to the ferret's cousin, the badger. Like miniature bulldozers, badgers dig for prairie dogs. They will just as readily kill a ferret. but badgers are as vital to the complex and beautiful prairie ecosystem as the impish and charming black-footed ferret. In the summer of 1992, ecstatic biologists observed a female ferret with 2 young in Shirley Basin. This historic event marks the first captive-raised mammal to survive and reproduce in the wild in North America. The ferrets have come home to Wyoming, where it's still possible to dream of the Wild West and to live that dream, at least for a few weeks each summer. Regardless of where you live in the continental United States, a piece of Wyoming helps heat or cool your home, cook your meals, or fuel your car. Wyoming's wildlife, just like wildlife everywhere, is affected by our need for land and energy. Whether or not the grizzly, the black-footed ferret, and who knows how many other species will survive another century in Wyoming depends on management of both wildlife and people. I believe with wisdom we will succeed. And 100 years from now, when my great-grandchildren are camping there, they too will hear the trumpeting of swans in beautiful, wild Wyoming. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America.